Bueno, pues
Let's continue with the next roundtables.
como ya hemos oído varias veces
As
y
we've
alguna vez
seen and
hemos
we've checked,
comprobado,
one
la
of the assets
experiencia
of
de
these course is
práctica
precisely the
también
practical
facilita
side
una serie
and
de aproximaciones
getting
entre
closer
todos
to professional environments and everything
aquello que se
that
deriva
stems
de esta
from
posibilidad
sharing
de todo el
all the
trabajo que
work we
hacemos cada
each of
uno.
us
Por eso
do.
ahora
So
tenemos una
this is the
mesa
third
encima de la
roundtable,
mesa que es el
which
pilotaje
is
del
well, how the pilot project is
sistema
going, because it's
de
actually ongoing,
facilitación procesal que
of
se está
the
prestando.
procedural facilitation
Nos
service.
acompañan
We're
ahora
gonna have
María
Maria Moruno with
Moruno,
us, Tatiana Urien,
Tatiana Uriel
and also Jose
y
Miguel
José Miguel
Fernandez.
Fernández Dons. Buenas, Marieta.
So
Pues presento
I'd like to
a quienes
introduce
nos
you to
acompañan
the
ahora. En primer
members of the
lugar,
roundtable. First, we've got Maria Moruno Lozano. She's an specialist in international cooperation for the development. She's got a very wide experience
programas de género
in
en
gender
Extremadura.
programs within Plan de Inclusión, and she's the coordinator of CEACOG in Extremadura. Tatiana Orien, she's in charge of
Eficaz y
families
calidad
and quality
en
at
gestiona
Gaudi Foundation,
y
and she
colabora
collaborates
con
with Jose Miguel Fernandez Dols in
formación
training for
para
ethics
ethics.
for Plan de Inclusión.
Y José Miguel
And Jose
Fernández
Miguel,
es catedrático de
he
Psicología
has a
en la
chair of
Universidad de
psychology
Madrid, colabora
at the
con
University in Madrid.
sobre
She collaborates with
discapacidad
Plena Inclusión,
y también
and
colabora
they're now
con
collaborating with CEACOG as well. First of all, Maria will
María nos va a
introduce us
presentar
to
el
the
trabajo que
advancements
llevamos
because this is an
desde
ongoing project. So she's going to talk about the procedural facilitation service, and then Tatiana and Jose Miguel
Miguel nos
will
presentará
show us their
el trabajo
work
que
on the Code of
realizan el
Ethics
equipo y el
and the
equipo
best practices code
para
for
facilitar la digitalización.
procedural facilitators that we're working on. So,
Así
Maria,
que María, cuando quieras,
you've got the floor.
tú.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Lourdes.
Well, first of
En
all,
primer lugar,
I'd like to thank you for inviting us to participate in this amazing adventure,
emocionante
and
también
it is a true honor to share
conversar con
this roundtable with my
mis
colleagues.
compañeros.
I'm going to talk about this pilot service.
Es un
This is a project that we wanted to develop,
principalmente para analizar
first of all, to assess the implementation of the project, especially at a large scale.
administrarla como
We hope that's going to be the case.
sea. Lo
We
queremos
wanted to
hacer
use it to
para
be able to assess the
evaluar la
feasibility
facilidad,
of the project, to identify possible issues,
pero sobre todo
but
para obtener
even more than that, to have feedback. We needed to know firsthand
ciudadanos
what the people, or what facilitators think, and what families think,
piensan las familias,
what professionals in different entities think, and what legal operators are thinking as well.
bueno,
So,
pues me he pasado ahora. Una de las
one of
actuaciones
the first actions we wanted to develop was
era la de
precisely
esta propuesta
to assess
de evaluar
the pilot project. And
y bueno, se ve fatal.
while all the data have been collected from October the 15th to November the 31st,
Necesitamos que
that we need this data to be understood that way because they're just of one part of it. We are still gathering data from
de este
this pilot.
ejercicio
We'll probably keep on doing
de
it
diciembre,
till the end of December. So
necesito
I need you to
que
understand that
es una parte
that's
de los
just part of the data we expect to get when
cuando
we're done with the training.
formación.
People who have
Que han sido
been facilitators in this case
pues han
were
sido
students
de
themselves,
alumnos y alumnas
students from the training course.
de formación. Se han recogido
We have gathered data
datos de la facilitación
from
del
on the facilitator process,
facilitadoras de las personas que se han
from the people who have offered the service to family members, and to legal operators, both in the police and in a court. Well,
bueno,
first of
en
all,
primer
we
lugar
want to show you,
enseñar si las personas que han
well, if
facilitado
these people, I'm going to turn around because I don't see this very well. I believe I'm going to be able to see better from here. Well,
Bueno, pues como veis, las personas
the people who have,
facilitadores
facilitators normally come from different entities.
tanto de federaciones,
They come from
movimientos
the Plan de
sociales,
Recuperación associations,
casi
almost 96% of them.
96%, ¿no?
And
Bueno, pues también
we also,
el trabajo,
this is the role that these people develop.
la entidad
They're
principalmente
normally either
pero
technicians in different projects or social workers.
también si
We also asked them if they had been, if they've had been facilitators before. 82% of them said that at some point they had been facilitators, and it's probably easier if you want to see it. It's easier to see it here. Now I understood what you were trying to say. She needed support. Okay.
Gracias.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Gracias. Bueno, pues como veis,
So almost 80, well, over 82% of the people who have been facilitators in this pilot project had already been facilitators prior to the project, because we had people with a very, very wide experience and
gran bagaje
a great amount of knowledge in the entities they normally work in.
del orden
And
jurisdiccional
95% came from
penal,
criminal law,
a lo que se ha dado facilitación.
and well, the gender of the people who received the service, mostly male,
masculino,
but I mean that's linked to global data of the criminal cases we have today. And we also asked for their age, normally between 22 and 39.
el margen de edad de las personas que
The people who received the service, the role of the person, they were normally the accused.
voy a pasar
I'm going to be fast because we'll provide you these this data when we've been able to analyze them a bit more. Many of them have a disability certificate, and well, the percentage of disability varies between well, mainly 43 most of the people. And the person who requested the facilitators normally is normally well, the recipient of the service. Some areas which have found the needed support, communication, comprehension, low level of vocabulary. The proposed adjustments according to the needs identified were, well, to speak clearly and slowly, which is the basis of it, respect times, increase breaks, the presence of the facilitator in the courtroom, not using abstract or technical concepts. Well, the number of hours spent with these persons, well, that varies, but almost 30% is direct attention to the recipient of the service. In the case the service, well, the services are basically mostly provided in the court. The role of the facilitator well, takes place mostly in court and less in the police environment. We know that many of them knew the role of the facilitator. However, in the police environment, police officers, almost 62% did not know anything about the role of the facilitator. The person who managed the service, well, they normally came from disability associations. They are the main allies, so service providers. That's where people get their support, and of course, you can see it in this piece of information. Why have you been in the police or in court? Many of them told us that they had been accused of committing a crime. 17% said, I'm a victim, a person to victim when he or she suffers some sort of harm, and 5% were witnesses. Okay? Is this the first time you have been involved in a judicial police proceeding? 17% of them said yes, and 82% said no. That's interesting. It's interesting to to get that information. When did you meet the facilitator? Before the trial, 100%. In US before the trial. Would you have liked to have met the facilitator earlier? Yes, 70% of them said yes. Did the facilitator help you understand the procedure? 100% said yes. Yeah, no doubt about it. Did the facilitator help you be calmer during the police interview of the procedure? Yes, 100%. Did you understand the documents you got from the court or the police? 40% said yes, 52% said no. Are you happy with the work developed by the facilitator? 100% yes. Indicate your relationship with the person. Well, it's normally a support person, people who are very close to them. There are other colleagues that have been working in prisons or courts for a very long time. They have been facilitators for a long time. They've been supporting people for a long time. The person you're accompanying belongs to any sort of organization. 80% of the people that got a facilitator are part of the Plan de Recuperación Association. If your answer is yes, indicate the typology. So, of course, 63% receive support from association. If this is the first time your family member or the support staff have been in the police services, well, most of them have never been got in such a service. Do you think the facilitator helped you understand the situation the person was in, whether it was police or judicial situation? 90% said yes. These we ask family members. Family members are agree with the importance of the facilitator. 90% of them. Did you feel reassurance by being accompanied by this figure? 90% said yes. How would you rate the service provided by the facilitator in this process? 90% said 5, but that's the highest possible. So from 0 to 5, 90% give us 5. Indicate the situation you're in. It depends. Police services, administration of justice, bar association, law firm, third sector organizations. Well, that's the data from the questions we have to professionals, so police or lawyers. Did you know about the facilitator for people with disabilities or understanding difficulties before this procedure? 60% said yes. That they knew about the role. 38% of them said no. Did you receive any sort of training or have you attended seminars linked to the role of the procedural facilitator? 61% of them said no. So that can give us a hint of the work we still have to do. Do you feel you have enough skills to communicate with people with disabilities or comprehension difficulties? 53%, almost 54% said no. They said they don't have those skills. And they also asked if the facilitator was useful. 100% of them said yes, no doubt. Yeah. Do you think the facilitator helped the person with a disability or comprehension difficulties to understand the interviews and the process? 100% said yes, yeah, no doubt. How would you rate the service provided by the facilitator? So 76% said, gave us a 5, so out of 5 out of 5. Well, these are the data. You need to extract the conclusions yourselves. Thank you. Interesting data, especially to encourage us to keep on working. I lost my glasses already. No. Well, Tatiana and Jose Miguel are going to show us the code of ethics that they're working on and the code of conduct for the procedural facilitator. You've got the floor. Would you like to? I think I'm fine here. Well, good morning. First of all, we would like to thank CEACOG and especially Inés de Raoz for trusting us to take these or have these important tasks, which is to provide a code of conduct or analyze the ethics of facilitators through the code of ethics and the code of good practice. I would also like to thank the coordinators from CEACOG. I never know how to pronounce this, but the original coordinators of CEACOG, because they have helped us and they're helping us to make sure we don't make a big mess of what they're doing, and they give us advices every day because they're the ones who are actually carrying out these activities every day. Let's see how this works. I'm going to show everything because I don't know how this works. Let's see.
No sé lo que me pasa. Mira, a ver cómo va. ¿Dónde doy? Aquí. Me podéis perdonar, ¿eh? Bueno, el objetivo del código.
The objective of the framework, of this code of ethics, is to define the ethical framework that should serve as a rule of professional conduct for the facilitator. And sorry. And while developing the codes, we wanted to make sure that both documents, or the code of ethics, the code of good conduct is more procedural. We wanted both of them to be anchored on the fact that the facilitator and facilitation has as a role to make sure the legal system is not a legal system that's only fair, not only the final goal is fair, but we want to make sure that it generates dignity and fairness all throughout the process to make sure the final result is fair, because it's very important that these processes can generate dignity and not humiliate and leave people feeling defenseless. So it's ethically clear that to make sure people with disabilities can feel dignity all throughout the process, for their voice to be heard and all throughout the process. And we want to make sure this voice is heard not just anyway, but through adjustments throughout the procedure. The people with disabilities must understand the situation, what's happening, and we need legal operators to understand what people are trying to express and for them to be able to hear their truth. And to guarantee these happens, it's very important that facilitators have one very important skill, which is neutrality. It's very important and very hard because they have to be able to self-regulate their emotions so they can manage their situations, so they are aware of the fact they are not an expert, as we mentioned earlier, and they are not a defense lawyer, and they're not a prosecutor either. But the task is limited to providing the necessary adjustments so people with disabilities can maximize their participation in the process and so maximize their dignity. Okay? Sorry, I'm going to use the volume now. What we've tried to do has been to blend two things that are very hard to blend when you have to generate these codes and create a code of conduct. First, we had an abstract approach that's based on several philosophers like Ross, for example, but especially around the work of two social psychologists, Wolf and Walter, because years ago they published an essential book in which their idea was that in court and in legal processes, it was very important to find truth, not justice, but they were talking about procedural justice. And that procedural justice was based around four main pillars. One of them, of course, is to make sure the process is fair. And the other three pillars are basically the seed for the role of the facilitator, which are to make sure the process is transparent, to make sure the process is impartial, and very importantly, that all the involved parties have a voice in the process. The concept of a voice, having a voice, is essential because it somehow shows the basic task of the procedural facilitator. And in the preface, they also mention the two main objectives to work around procedural justice, which are on the one hand to find justice, but also to make sure that all the parties can express their truth, and that's the abstract concept. And one of the issues of creating a code of conduct means that we cannot include anything that's new. And what we thought about basically was to have a more specific part, which was to reconcile legal language and everyday language. One of the issues, or one of the obstacles that we've got today to generate a code of ethics and a code of conduct is that we are creating the code as at the same time as we are creating the professional role, and then sets an important series of limitations. For example, in the code of conduct that Professor Mahoney mentioned, for the professionals in England and Wales, there are a series of aspects. Some of them have been included, although I won't mention them today because they are included in almost every code of conduct, such as a confidentiality or a conflict of interest. But there are other aspects that are extremely interesting, but require the consolidation of the professional role as such. For example, the hiring processes in the Code of England and Wales. Well, that's quite a lengthy chapter. Everything that's linked to how to monitor their work, which requires a very important institutional framework that allows it to assess the degree of professional development of facilitators. So there are very important elements of a code of conduct that we can just mention, given that the role is being developed right now. Well, we are also aware of it. That's why we focused around the core of the practice of the facilitator.
With a set of principles that do not say anything new. One of the virtues of a code of ethics is not to be original, to repeat what has already been said in many different ways, and what has been said here today from the description of the professional practice in other countries, or from the description of the training that the facilitators, procedural facilitators are receiving already. Those are things as important as impartiality, and generating dignity, something that Tatiana mentioned, facilitate the truth of a person with disability, regulate emotionality so that it doesn't interfere negatively in the proceeding, to reconcile the judicial with the everyday concept of justice. We have already spoken about the fact that for many people, the jargon, the legal jargon can be extraordinarily difficult to understand for everyday people and for common people, and also to know and respect the rules of the judicial system, which is an extremely formal system that sometimes can become alien for people that work in the support and assistance environment. And that's why the translation of those principles that we have taken as an example of best practices are not necessarily original, and they just make reference to elements that any professionals with some experience will tell you about. For example, one very important one is resilience, emotional resilience. Professor Mahoney has mentioned that problem in particular. Many professionals point out how stressful this work can be in the long run. And some others that we have discovered as we listen to professionals and read documents, how important the facilitator is to become an ambassador of facilitation in the judicial environment, and to be able to win for their cause the different stakeholders like judges and prosecutors, then also their competencies as an expert in communication, the adaptations of previous adaptations, profound knowledge based on professional and personal experience. That is one of the main challenges of the current situation, because as my colleague has just said, prior experience in Spain does not necessarily translate into a good knowledge of what we understand as a good facilitator. That is one of the main challenges that we have to face and that we will have to tackle. And finally, an in-depth knowledge of the judicial and police force processes. That's something which can become cumbersome and difficult, but it is extraordinarily important as well. And from there, what we need to do, and what Tatiana and myself are committed to achieve, is to generate a code of ethics and a code of conduct which will always be open to amendments along the way. It will have to be reviewed and enriched with experience as the figure of the procedural facilitator becomes more widespread and gains the importance that we all want to attribute to it. And that's all. I think there's very little else we can say about it. So are there any questions for them, for this roundtable?
Thank you. I've come here to learn today and take away good practice as well. I'm really interested in the ethics issues. I understand what you're saying about the procedural facilitator must regulate the emotional side in the judicial setting. I wonder if you have any thoughts about the role of the procedural facilitator in how they help the vulnerable person to regulate their emotions, and the impact that that has on legal actors who are viewing their responses to questions, and how they come across in the courtroom.
That's a great question, because actually we have been discussing this point for a while, okay? Something that worries us is the fact that at some particular times, in this extremely formal context, you can run into situations in which the emotionality of the person you are facilitating might clash with the forms and the expectations of the professionals around you. And it's probably one of the most important challenges in this case, because in a way, you have to be neutral. You have to keep some psychological distance with respect to the person you are helping. But at the same time, and probably this emotionality is somehow impairing his or her chances of being safe in the whole process. So probably the facilitator must develop some skills in order to help the person to regulate their emotions and not be, in any case, too salient or inadequate and provoking emotional reactions in other actors and leading to disaster, okay? So it's a extremely important issue. I'm not aware of how much this problem is addressed in the training the new facilitators are getting, but I think it's very interesting. I wonder if you have any specific experience about this problem.
Yeah, if I could briefly share two sides, I suppose. One was
un par de cuestiones, ¿no? Cuando me he visto yo.
Sorry, I'm getting the translation at the same time. It's confusing. Yeah, with an accused person at court who was accused of a violent offence, and my role as a communication facilitator is to enable effective communication for him at court as the accused, but regulating his emotions to enable him to communicate could be viewed as changing how he presents at court.
Right.
So that's an ethical issue, I think. And the other side of it is a victim, complainant, giving evidence at court by regulating or helping them to regulate their emotions. The court, the jury, the judge, whoever, might not see the impact of the alleged offence on them if they're being assisted to regulate their emotion. So two sides of it, right. and the ethics of that.
Right. I think that one of the big challenges for this professional figure is to deal with the right balance in order to get this balance between emotionality and neutrality. And I think that's not my profession, but I'm really, I admire this capacity because my intuition is that must be extremely difficult at sometimes. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? So at this time of the session, we see a practical application of the usefulness of the adjustment and the need for support, because when they started to speak, I said, I don't know how I will answer that. I don't speak English, and Jose Miguel has given me some support, and he has solved it because I was missing my translation, my headset. I see that there's a question there. Thanks to the roundtable, congratulations on your presentation. And my question is the following. Regarding those ethics limits, I heard a very interesting presentation about the promises that professions make. And there's a promise in the role of the facilitator. I didn't know what the promise would be, in your opinion, of the clear communication or of the fair relations. But my question is linked to that promise. How ethically can a question emerge when there are other groups of population that legitimately want to access such a figure? I'm thinking about the elderly, other people that perhaps do not have a very clear label, but which in some way could need that support, and we could be questioning the fairness of justice in those cases if we don't offer them that possibilities. I think you have made an excellent remark. My impression would be that figure, that professional is not only necessary for people with disabilities, it can also be extremely necessary for many other people. I would even say that for anyone in certain contexts. Professor Mahoney was speaking about children with different types of problems. An interview that I had the opportunity to listen to, there was a Mexican professional who was talking about psychosocial disabilities, people with psychosocial disabilities, which is an interesting concept as well. I'm also thinking, and Tatiana and myself were discussing, for example, immigrants that arrive with very little knowledge of the language or rudimentary knowledge, not only of the language, but also of the cultural context in which they have just landed. And it is not because I'm addressing this audience, but really, I think that would be a figure that should be contemplated as an institution in any court for anyone, as we have the court agent or the barrister or the court clerks or what any other type of stakeholder. It would be extremely important to have those available for everyone. It could be of great support for forensic psychologists and for many other people as well. Okay, so we are now going to close this roundtable and we go to the last roundtable of the day. Thanks a lot to the three of you.